You're rewarded in life in direct proportion to the quantity, quality, and consistency of problems you solve and opportunities you make possible for others. And if you lose track of that, then you can never be as successful as the opportunity allows and your effort should deliver. So you got to get realigned with
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the None of Your Business podcast. And oh boy, today do we have a super special treat for you on two fronts. First of all, I want to introduce in our co-host today, the amazing Chris Helms. You've seen him on other episodes as a guest. Today, sitting in and helping me. He's doing the heavy lifting because we have a super special guest here. One of my very early mentors, I have to say, and express gratitude to this gentleman who has meant so much to Lacey and I's business development. And I hope that we can get into some of those stories today. But I am extremely thankful to have you on this program today. Jay Abraham, thanks for being here.
my great honor.
You know why? Our connection, Indianapolis.
That's
so
right.
I'm a Hoosier. You are a Hoosier. I want to start there because it's easy. The Tony Robbins, all of the amazing things that you have done, Daymond John, Dave Asprey, the influence into the entrepreneurial space, unquestioned. But I want to talk about the cassette tapes.
Sure.
Remember the story of the cassette?
Of course.
Tell us how you get started and tell us the business lesson from the cassette tapes.
Well, it probably, if you don't mind, I think if you don't mind going back a couple of moves before that, it might be even more useful. So, I got married the first time, and I'm not saying that with pride, but I've been married many times. I got married the first time when I was 18. I had two kids at 20, and the need of somebody 40 in the world didn't care. The only people that would give me opportunity were very unique entrepreneurs who gave me no salary. It was sort of eat what you kill. The good thing about it is that it wasn't time denominated. It was result denominated. Consequently, I could do multiple things. They didn't care if I spent a minute or 12 hours. They just said, hey, if you can generate revenue, you get a piece. If you don't, you don't. And you learn very quickly, if you only eat when you earn, you learn very quickly what works, what doesn't. And I jumped around in many, many activities concurrently. I was doing 5, 10 things at a time, and fortuitously, and this will come to the answer, then I'll tell you about cassettes. None of them were in the same industry. And after about 10, I made a profound distinction that changed my professional life. And it wasn't where I was thinking I'd go, but I realized that people in one industry do not have a clue how people in other industries think, act, transact. They don't do the same strategy, same business models. They tend to follow the herd, and they don't always do things that are the highest and best performer. They just do things that are the standard operating procedure. And I was able to take very, very common as dirt methodologies from industries I'd been introduced to, combine them, and then apply them to the new industries. And everybody thought I was a genius. Everything blew up, but not because I was so bright, because I was an emissary from another planet, so to speak. The one-eyed man in the land of the blind. But when I realized the power, then I become obsessive about learning everything I could about everything I could. So now, fast forward, we did Icy Hot, we did Entrepreneur Magazine, but going to that period of time in Indianapolis, I was between successes, and you do have ups and downs. And it was an era where actually there were 8-track, they weren't cassette. 8-track tapes came in, and there was an era where the copyright laws were different. You could legally reproduce something, and it was not illegal for many years. There was a huge market of selling 8-tracks that were, I guess you could call it, replications of the ones that the labels were selling, except these were $3, $4 instead of $15. In Indianapolis, there were very little representation. It was bigger on the West Coast, and I was able to make a contact with a large group like a 7-Eleven. And I made a deal without any contacts to provide for this, but I got the rights to put cassette tape cases on the counters and share the revenue with them, a third to them on a contingent consignment basis, a third to them, a third to me, a third to a provider. I didn't have the provider, but when I got the contract, then I went and I found a provider in St. Louis who I had no credit, I had no history of being able to do this, but the guy sent me about $500,000 of cassettes and cases. I had the contract. He sent me the merchandise, the inventory. I hired my relative to be our service person. I bought him a $500 beat up station wagon. Every week he would just go around the 40 or 50 stores, taking inventory, really replacing all the the sales that had made or the bad, or the rejects that had come back, and we would get an invoice. I would get paid. I would give a third of it to the store, a third of it to the guy that gave me the inventory. We'd keep a third, and I was making $12,000 a week doing nothing. I was sort of Tom Sawyer painting the fence,
Yep.
and I did a lot of things like that. But that's sort of the essence of the story.
That story, and I love that, right? And I
Yes.
hope that everybody will take that and apply that, because he had no merchandise, no credit, no capital, and then structured the deal.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, then later on with Daymond John, the For Us, By Us shirt story that we hear Daymond tell, very similar, yes?
Well, that's true. He basically only had about a dozen or two T-shirts, and he would lend them temporarily to an icon to wear for a shoot or a video, and then he'd take it back. But he was also very smart. He realized that the best use of this, besides in the videos for celebrities and hip hop people, was to let the bouncers wear them outside of the really popular clubs. So they gave bouncers two or three of these because people are standing in line waiting to get in. They're seeing this really beefed up guy wearing this really hot shirt, and those two things, sharing and taking back the shirts from the LL Cool J's and all those people, and then letting the bouncers have multiple shirts so that every night they wore another one, was really the genesis of how they got the brand really indelibly embedded in that whole culture.
Love it.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
very
it.
smart. It was very, very, very guerrilla.
I actually heard him tell that story, but the way he really broke out is he essentially stalked LL Cool J
Yes.
until he said, "What will it take for me to get you to leave me alone?"
That's hilarious. Yeah, I think
and he
you're
said,
right.
"We just take a picture with this shirt on," and then boom, it was like a rocket ship.
Yeah.
And how did you get to be the preeminent name or force of marketing?
Well,
Where did that start?
it's a pretty lofty title. I think it started because I got introduced early. I mean, I've been doing this 50 years. Not trying to date myself, but I've been doing it 50 years. I got introduced to very measurable, very, very analytical direct response mechanisms when I was about 20. Nobody else understood that. I understood things like measurability, variability, lifetime value, risk reversal, allowable acquisition cost, lifetime value, and nobody even knew it. I mean, to show you how old I am, I was part of Entrepreneur magazine when it started, and nobody even knew what that word meant. We had to send out mailing pieces this big because we had to put Webster's dictionary's definition and phonetic pronunciation because nobody could even pronounce the word. But so I got when everybody else was doing what I would call institutional ads and had no context and no understanding of what drove the psychology of a market, I understood it better than anybody. I wasn't brilliant, but I took disciplines from a mail order world and I introduced them to, at that time, the huge offline, I mean, not offline, but the brick and mortar world. And then I always knew that you grow from analyzing things outside your comfort zone. So I created something called funnel vision versus tunnel vision. I was obsessed. I was hopelessly curious to learn everything I could about everything I could in every industry I could, because I realized there were universal principles you could isolate, integrate, create hybrids, and then apply to other industries. And I was always willing to invest first. So in other words, I became very prominent to a bunch of authors, probably business authors, maybe 100 of them, because I met the people at Nightingale Conant, and Nightingale Conant used to be this huge publisher of audio programs for businesses, and they had 100 or 200 authors, and I helped Nightingale Conant make billions of dollars, and I didn't charge them, and they became a believer. Then they introduced me to all their authors, and I offered to buy their authors time with me. No questions asked. No catch other than if you are impacted and it works, tell the world. And I hit it with about 90%, and then I was off to the races. And then I became prominent in certain fields. The newsletter field, I had 40 clients at the time. Then Tony was starting out, and he had a challenge with a very important program, and they came to me to figure it out, and I was able to do that. And then as he and I got close, he was fascinated with, and I have a lot of methodology. I have 97 categories of exponential growth methodology. So he was fascinated with it. He started using it. It worked very, very significantly for him. He applied derivatives. He used a variation of what I taught him, I think, and he applied it. So it's not unique. It's not giving me credit, but he applied it to the LA Kings, and they won like 10 games in a row. And it's sort of a derivative of Moneyball, the Moneyball. Basically, I became very obsessed with working on the geometry of a business. Breakthroughs are very, very wonderful when you can achieve them, but if you just increase the performance of a multiplicity of levers in a business, the aggregate can be hundreds and hundreds of percent. And if you do both, it's off the chart. So, I don't know if that's a good answer or an abstract answer.
It's a great answer. It's a great answer. Let's talk about, I'm seeing you with Dan Kennedy recently.
That was fun. Did you like that?
Yeah, but tell me a little bit about that, because you've made reference to this, like not trying to date myself. Do you feel like you and Dan represent like a certain era of business and consulting and marketing and sales?
Well, yes and no. I personally started in selling real products. Then I got into expensive information, Entrepreneur Magazine, newsletters. Then I got into experts. But as I've gotten older, because I do not want to be obsolete or antiquated, I have thrust myself into a different mecca or genre of business, which are more product service providers in a broad spectrum. I have 40 active clients all over the world. I have them in Israel, I have them in Germany, I have them in Japan, I have them in Australia, and 90% of them are not doing information marketing. So I would say that I got started in that genre. I was very successful for probably 25 years, and then I made a conscious decision, mostly because intellectually I felt that there were so many fascinating things going on in so many industries and so many professions in so many different disciplines that if you learn them, you couldn't help but keep growing and expanding. And I believe you either grow or die, you either expand or you contract intellectually as a person, as a business, as a significant other. And I wanted to be always multiplying myself, not diminishing. So I took a different path. I think that I don't think we're relics. I think we are emissaries. And I think that we learned a lot of universal principles that young people don't always realize are still about as powerful today as they have been ever, but they have to be articulated and contextualized a little differently.
Well, just one more question on that, because I wanted to also get your take then.
And you may not agree with my answer.
No, I absolutely agree. But I want to get your take, because I do agree. I would love to get your take on current, social media, the funnels, the automations and all of this. And then what that does is it spurns off these new gurus, right?
Yeah.
The younger generation, some of these people are in their 20s, right?
Yes.
And when you look out at the entrepreneurial marketplace, what are your thoughts on today's world? Like, should we be trusting these people? Are they
Well, you
trustworthy?
just hit on something. It troubles me because I think the responsibility you have when you take on the role of being an advisor to any segment of the population, it's an auspicious and a very the responsibility is profound, and I don't think a lot of young people really know it. It's I mean they and I think a lot of consumers are attracted to them for the wrong reason. And I've seen a lot of young people in information marketing. They would master a tactic, and then they would stop doing the tactic, and they would just teach it, and they would convince people that their whole life would transform and their wealth would explode if they only applied that tactic. And I've always been very mindful that I have a responsibility not to play havoc with people's lives or their wealth or their mental health well-being, because when I was younger, I'll tell you a story that really was defining to me. One of my many experiences is I sold radio advertising in Indianapolis for, at the time, the number one station in that genre. It was called Middle of the Road, 25 to 50. And it was Frank Sinatra and talk. And I was charged with opening up little accounts that had no agency. And I didn't realize how limited media could be with the wrong dynamics driving it. And so we had a guy that was a copywriter, and I'd go off and I'd sell people who'd never bought advertising before on radio, and I'd convince them we were going to transform their business. And we had a copywriter whose claim to fame was he could write a 60-second commercial in 60 seconds. The problem was that they all bombed. And I realized, and I got out of the business because I realized I didn't just disappoint that newly attracted client to our station, I prejudiced them forever on radio advertising, which, if properly done, if developed, if nurtured, and if somebody who really gave a, did it, it could work. And so I felt like and then I had another experience, which was profound. About the same time, I wanted very badly. There was a man who was the number one copywriter in mail order in the United States, and he had a book that he was selling everywhere, and he sold millions and millions of copies. And I was introduced to him, and I wanted to go to work for him. I was in Indianapolis, and I flew out at my own expense. We had this wonderful day-long meeting, interview, interaction. I went home certainty and confident I was going to go to work for the guy, and I couldn't wait to transform my life. And the guy called me and he said, Jay, it was profound to me. He said, Jay, I think it was very complimentary. He didn't say I was a genius, but he said, I think you're a profound person, and I know you're going to be monstrously successful, but I don't want the responsibility of you coming out here, uprooting yourself, getting a house, moving your family, and if it doesn't work out, not having anybody you know and being stuck here, and I can't give you the job, not because I don't want to, but I don't want the responsibility for your fate. And that was profound to me. And I've tried to be vigilant about worrying about the repercussions, not if something works out, but if something doesn't. I had a partner, I'm not going to name him because he's well known, and we stopped working together because he was flip about worrying about other people's, I'm going to use the right word, other people's sense of security. He would hire commissioned salespeople and promise them they're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he didn't have the system right. He didn't have the leads right. He didn't have anything right, and these poor people would quit their secure jobs, go to work for him and starve, and then be really, they would get in terrible trouble, go back. They'd have terrible prejudice towards him and I didn't care about the prejudice. I cared about
people,
the responsibility for their well-being. Somebody taught me years ago, and this is sort of metaphysical, but your purpose in life is every time you ever interact with anybody for any reason, for any amount of time, your job is to make them better off because you were in their life. And making them worse off is a selfish and a very, very morally and it's out of moral context, it's out of integrity. And I learned that earlier, and I don't think, now I'm going to circle back and thread it to your needle. I don't think a lot of young people have any context, any comprehension, any responsibility. They're just basically having a good time, being vulgar, showing their derriere, or doing rude things, or saying vulgarity. I mean, I don't personally think that that's long-term in the best interest of anyone. But I also, if you have an indiscriminate consumer, that's another problem.
So I've been listening, like actually listening. Remember the first iPod?
Sure.
It was too heavy. If you wore it in your pants, you
Yeah, of
wear a
course.
belt. Well, my boss, like 25 years ago, said, "Here, Chris, listen to this iPod and summarize everything that's on it." Guess what was there? You.
Okay, that's
Nobody
funny.
else, just you. And so I started listening to all this stuff in my 20s. The question I have though is, take your 93 referral systems.
We have 125 now.
That was my question. Are there still only 93? Because things have changed in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And what are you telling people today?
Yeah, so let me tell you the good and the bad about me, and I like the word contextualize what you said. So in the 90s and the 2000s, I had helped so many people that had access to entrepreneurs, and I had something most of my contemporaries didn't, which was capital. So I could fund anything I wanted. I could fund mailings in behalf of other people who would endorse me. I could fund 20-page ads in in-flight magazines. So I was prominent everywhere, and my focus was almost exclusively marketing. And I was very good at it. In fact, I was world class at the time and way above everybody else. That's just clinical. It's not arrogant. However, as I got older and expanded my horizons and my worldview, my business and life worldview, I realized that marketing and advertising, as powerful a driver as they are of business, they are a diminishing resource. They have to be regenerated over and over again. They can get saturated. Media can get more expensive. Platforms can change the algorithms. COVID can change the whole dynamic. And so I shifted to really being fanatical about strategy, about business model, about distribution channel, about not value, not unique selling value, but preemptive or monopolistic positioning. I got very, very expansive in strategic alliances, joint ventures, recommended provider status, endorsements, co-branding, referral networks, and generation. And I got obsessive about reclamation of sunk cost investments and turning that into profit centers, because I believed if you have those in place, the great marketing or advertising is the cherry on the icing on the cake. That's the good news and the bad news, because I don't even really remember most of my methodology for marketing because I'm so much more into higher level leverage. I don't know if that's the answer.
All of this, I want to, as we're nearing the end, I got to get two very important things in. Number one of the greatest gifts that Lacey ever received was you sent her a copy of Mr. X, like the actual Mr. X book.
Right. Okay.
This book, by all accounts, anybody that I ever meet, they're like that, like, and anybody that sees it, they're like, "How'd you get that?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, Jay sent that to Lacey." How come more people don't know? Why are you not sharing Mr. X with the world?
And the reason is that I'm a mad scientist. I'm a poster boy for adult attention deficit. And I would fire myself, because what makes a business massively successful is doing the same thing over and over again and scaling. I can't stand doing the same thing over and over again. We created that book in 1990 or 91.
Is the story true?
Oh, it is totally true. But we sold, believe it or not, we sold 72,000 copies in about 18 months at $377 a copy. And we did it because I was very adroit at both setting up joint ventures with people that had the trust of their audience and writing, at the time, outrageously compelling copy. And one day I just got tired of doing it, and I stopped. We were doing sold out seminars all over the world for, our low one was 5 and our high one was 30,000, and we were getting 800 people, every month in the United States. We were doing Japan, China, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, UK. And I just one day thought, I don't want to be intellectual entertainment. We just stopped. And I would fire myself, but I've been on a mission all my life of discovery more than I have optimizing my business success, my own business success. I far enjoy helping others, and there's no good rationale. It's not the most astute way to run a railroad, but it's the way I've chosen to live my life.
So what are you up to today? That was and if people are listening and they're like, hey, I need to know about Mr. X, or I want to work with Jay. How do people get plugged into the world of Jay
Well,
Abraham?
so you know this, for many years I gave away more valuable stuff than I ever sold because I got disgusted by the people that were hustling. But I'm very expensive. Let me start with that. And I'm not going to tell you my rates, but I'm very expensive. I'd like to hope it's inexpensive, actually, if you take action. If you don't, it's a blatant waste. But you can contact me. You can contact me at jay@abraham.com, and we will happily explore the impact that I could make on you. I normally work on a one-time retainer, and I get a piece of the profit increases that I can engineer for a period of time. We don't, I mean, I have, if you become a client, we have, believe it or not, I have 16 or 18 books, half of which I never ever sold. We would just pay a ghostwriter 50 or 100 grand to collaborate with me just to flesh out a theorem, and then I would not do anything with it. We give them to our clients, but I really don't sell a lot anymore per se. We have, we have stuff out there, and a lot of people sell my stuff better than I do, and I don't make anything for it. But yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted Mr. X, we have some of the leatherette versions
Yes.
still. But really, I probably fire myself on. So, for example, I have many, you would say, iconic business people that I have helped, or I have befriended, or have befriended me, and we have dinners and lunches, and I would never put pictures of them and I on social media. You're not going to see my homes. You're not going to see my automobiles. You're not going to see my wife and you're not going to see us, whether we fly private or not. That's just not who I am. So yeah, I mean, it's, we have a lot of stuff out there. I have webinars out there that I've got, 400 episodes of a podcast out there. If you're clever, you can still. We've taken off the market. I'll tell you a fascinating disappointment. 10 years ago, everyone was starting to hustle all this crap, and they were just. I would call it. I'm going to be vulgar. Cocktease. It was stuff that people would use to get you to opt in, and it was so superficial. And that disgusted me. And so I went the other way. I took all my body of work and I started giving it away. And I said, all I ask in exchange is we're not going to hustle you. We're not going to, I didn't have a funnel. I said, all I ask is help me go viral. Give it to 25 people you know or you should know. And nobody did it. I did it for a few years, and I kept looking at my email list, and it never grew. So I took it off the market, not because I cared about it economically. I got started for a very unique reason, never to make money. I saw all these passionate, purpose-driven entrepreneurs working their hearts and souls out, dedicating their lives, their hopes, their dreams, the majority of their day to this vehicle called their business. And I was just heartbroken because they accepted a fraction of two things. First and foremost, the impact, the contribution, the value they could have created to more people if they knew how to reach them, communicate them, convince them, and then secondly, the rewards they would get. That was always my purpose, and sometimes I'm very disappointed with humanity because we're very selfish.
I love it. I love it. Well, I think that Chris will be one of the first ones to be reaching out, jay@abraham.com, for one of those leatherette Mr. X books. That's
Absolutely.
the one that Jay had sent Lacey. My very first time meeting you, your office in Torrance, right there at the end of the runway there at the airport. I came in, I had a full suit on. I don't have to wear suits very much these days anymore. And I sat there and I just was pouring sweat. So you did a great job. You're not sweating like I was. I think even you might have stopped and said, "Are you okay?" But I remember Lacey saying, "Oh my gosh!" But one of the things I want to say thank you so much. In that very first meeting, we were just talking, and you were like, "You have to write a book." And I must have made a face. I always tell this story. I must have made a face because you said, "I can see that you don't like the idea." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Well, I don't know that I don't not like the idea. I can't see myself writing a book." So I can totally understand you with all of your body of work and the effort that goes into that. And you were like, well, there's a lot of ways to write a book. And we ended up, thanks to you, writing our book. And that book is called None of Your Business, the same name as this particular podcast. Yeah. And I am just so grateful to you for all that you've brought into our lives.
See, and thank you for that. But I really believe if you have knowledge that a high percentage of an audience that you are passionately committed to doesn't know, it certainly is a vehicle to stimulate business, but it's also a mechanism of contribution. I think in our lives, we need fulfillment. And part of what I think is wrong with young people, their motives are wrong. They really don't do anything for purpose. Well, they do. They do it for the purpose of avariciously monetizing their relationship, but they don't do it really, I think, for meaningful, significant contribution to others. And I think that's a big mistake that I'd like to hope that over time it'll be realized. It may not, but I think everything you do, I think you're rewarded in life. Honest, I'll leave you with this. You're rewarded in life in direct proportion to the quantity, quality, and consistency of problems you solve and opportunities you make possible for others. And if you lose track of that, then you could never be as successful as the opportunity allows, and your effort should deliver. So you got to get realigned with what's really important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jay.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chris, for co-hosting. This was a phenomenal episode. As Jay said, let's all do Jay a favor. If you got anything out of this episode, please share that on. Hey, and listen, if you contact me, I don't know if they've taken it down, but last time I've checked, that website was still up. I'll send you the link to where you can see all of the body of work.
It's sort of covert, and we've kept it up to see if people are willing to work hard enough to find it.
Well, if they're willing to work hard enough, they can contact me. I'll get them connected. But do Jay a favor. Let's restore faith in not just humanity, but all of us as entrepreneurs who have a service, a gift to provide to the world. Let's share Jay's work. I know that I've benefited greatly. If you've benefited greatly during this episode, do us all a favor. Reach out to Jay, share Jay's work. Let's let the world know about Jay Abraham.